Hello everyone, this is Ghang Lee, project leader of ISO 29481 Part 3. Today I will update you on the progress of the IDM schema, also known as idmXSD or IDM XML schema definition, and the IDM Toolkit project. The IDM schema is being considered as ISO 29481 Part 3. I'll first give you an overview and status update on the IDM schema and Toolkit project, and briefly explain the structure of IDM XSD on a high level. I received many questions about how the IDM schema is connected to other standards. I'll describe the relationships between IDM and other associated standards and how the IDM schema can link to them. Finally, I'll wrap up this presentation by introducing a couple of software applications we are developing to validate the schema. Many of you are already familiar with IDM and the IDM schema and Toolkit project, but let me briefly explain the background for those who are new to this topic and then give you the status update on the project. For many years, Building Smart International BSI has used this diagram to explain three major standards of BSI: IDM, IFC, and IFD. This was easy to understand, but inaccurate because IDM includes a process, but not only the process. IDM stands for Information Delivery Manual and is also referred to as Information Delivery Specification, IDS. ISO 29481 Part 1 is the IDM standard. Here's the definition of IDM from ISO 29481 Part 1. As shown in the definition, IDM specifies a method to define a business process and information required by the business process. So if I have to pick one keyword for IDM, I would choose information requirements rather than process. In April 2019, BSI initiated the IDM Toolkit project with two goals in mind. Mark Baldwin and I were the project leaders. The first goal was to develop a standard IDM data schema to make IDM documents easily machine readable and transferable. ISO refers to a standard that is machine applicable, readable, and transferable as SMART. So we can say we are trying to develop SMART IDM. The data schema for IDM is referred to as idmXSD, IDM XML schema definition. The second goal of the IDM Toolkit project was to invite software developers and develop software applications to support IDM XSD. This was not the first attempt to develop an IDM data schema, and there have been several efforts. The IDM standard, as we know today, was first proposed as the IDM guide by Jeffrey Weeks in 2005. The Jeffrey Weeks' IDM documentation guide became an international standard as ISO 29481 Part 1 in 2010. Then it was updated in 2016. Regarding the IDM data schema development efforts, there may be more, but there are two representative ones, the one by Nick Nisbet in 2008, and the other one by my team at Yonsei University in 2011. Nick Nisbet developed a simple IDM schema by mapping IDM elements to the IFC XML schema elements as shown in the diagrams. The other IDM schema was developed by my team at Yonsei University as part of an effort to develop a method and tool that can automatically generate an MVD directly from an IDM specification. Here's a quick demo of the XPPM tool. The ER-XML generated by XPPM could be formatted into a document. Also, an MVD could be automatically generated from the specified ERs. However, all of these are efforts to develop a proprietary IDM data schema. An effort to develop a standard IDM data schema was initiated within BSI in 2016. The IDM Toolkit project officially began as a BSI project in April 2019 through several changes. A draft standard IDM data schema was developed through a year-long effort with 45 BSI members from 19 countries through 22 meetings. In May 2020, the IDM schema was submitted to ISO as a candidate for ISO 29481 Part 3. In October 2020, the proposal was approved as an ISO SEN liaison project. In January 2021, a draft reviewed and modified by ISO TC59 SE13 WG8 was submitted to ISO as a committee draft. On March 16, 2021, last week, the draft was officially approved as a committee draft. Currently, the draft is going through revisions to become a draft international standard, DIS. In parallel, we are developing a couple of software applications to test the validity of the proposed IDM schema. If successful, the IDM schema will officially become an international standard on July 1, 2022. Let me briefly explain the structure of idmXSD on a high level. This is the IDM framework defined in ISO 29481 Part 1. It's mainly composed of two parts, business context and exchange requirement. MVD is not part of IDM, but is strongly associated with ER. MVD is a formal definition of ERs. A business context can be represented as process maps or interaction transaction maps, or both. A process map is an activity-focused representation of a business context. An interaction map is a role-focused representation of a business context. A transaction map is a detail-level map of an interaction map. An IDM document must have a header section and an overview section. In the IDM schema, the header section was translated into a set of elements that define identifiers, authors, and a changelog in idmXSD. And the overview section was translated into the use case element. IDM can be viewed as a wrapper of use cases, business contexts, and exchange requirements. Or it can be viewed as a folder. In this analogy, a use case can be viewed as a label of an IDM folder. And business context and exchange requirements can be viewed as the contents of the IDM folder. I'm giving a high-level overview of the IDM schema because the schema is still under review and subject to change. If you are interested in reviewing the schema in detail, please email me. As mentioned earlier, most of the comments on idmXSD are associated with the relationships between IDM and other related standards. So let me explain the relationships between IDM and other associated standards and how idmXSD can help them to be connected to each other. The standards that are most directly related to ISO 29481 Part 1 are ISO 19510 BPMN Business Process Modeling Notation Standard and ISO 29481 Part 2 Interaction Map and Transaction Map Standard. They define business context of the information required for an IDM. ISO 19650 Part 1 specifies information submission and management requirements and mandates a list of specific information requirements. ISO 12006 Part 3 specifies the schema for data dictionary. The terms used in ISO 29481 Part 1 can refer to the terms specified according to ISO 12006 Part 3. ISO 16739 Part 1 IFC and other open data schema standards, including their model view definitions, formalize information requirements into a data schema. EN 17412 Part 1 Level of Information Need, LOIN, categorizes the levels and types of information requirements. Finally, ISO 21597 Part 1 Information Container Standard packages information to meet information requirements. Not all of these relations can be expressed through the IDM schema. Different strategies should be deployed for different standards. For example, in case of ISO 19650, the link between ISO 29481 Part 1 and ISO 19650 Part 1 and 2 can be strengthened by simply adding a clause that says information requirements shall be specified according to ISO 29481 Part 1. EN 17412 LOIN specifies the levels and types of information requirements. In case of LOIN, the solution is the same as that for ISO 19650. It can simply include a clause to follow that says follow ISO 29481 Part 1 to specify detailed information requirements. In case of ISO 12006 Part 3, we can take a different approach. The concepts and terms specified according to ISO 12006 Part 3 can be mapped to information units of idmXSD through the corresponding MVD element of idmXSD. And the basis schema can be set to a data dictionary defined according to ISO 12006 Part 3. Then the specific terms can be mapped to information units through the corresponding external element of idmXSD. By the same token, an element in any data schema or an MVD can be mapped to information unit through idmXSD. For example, the basis schema can be specified as IFC 4.0 or CTGML or both. The corresponding MVD allows to map zero to many MVDs to an ER. Then a specific element of a selected MVD can be mapped to an information unit. Finally, I'll briefly show you videos of two software applications that are developed to test idmXSD and wrap up my talk. The first one is XPPM-Neo. After logging onto the system, you can create a new empty IDM. Then you need to fill in basic information such as the name of the IDM. The third step is to specify a use case including a summary and the aim and scope. You can optionally add actors and project phases that the IDM supports. The fourth step is to specify a process map and the fifth step is to specify exchange requirements. You can also add graphical and textual examples. Here we are using basic IDM document developed by Bim Lockheed of the Netherlands as an example. Finally, you can export the entire data in the IDM format, and you can, if you combine it with XML style sheet, you can visualize or format the XML in a user-friendly way. The alpha version of XPPM-Neo is scheduled to be released in April 2021, the beta version in July 2021, and the first official release in October 2021. All these versions will be released for free. The schedule is subject to change due to the changes of the IDM data schema. The second tool I'd like to demonstrate is the IDM Exchange Server. Once we have an IDM document specified in the IDM XML format, you can upload the XML file to the IDM Exchange Server. Then by selecting an IDM XML style sheet of your choice, you can format the XML file as you like. Here's the basic IDM displayed in the original style. And here's the same basic IDM file in the IDM XML format in another style. You can also create your own style sheet and upload it to this website to show the XML file in a different format. This is it for today's talk. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments.